Hey, friend, Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. If you like hard hitting mixes and hard hitting music, then you probably are a fan of Andy Wallace's work. And if you're not a fan, you probably have heard his work. Andy's the guy who famously mixed Nirvana's Nevermind, one of the best rock records of all time. He's mixed Foo Fighters, he's mixed Coldplay, even Guns N' Roses. The guy has been crushing it in the studio for over 50 years. The dude rarely sits down to give interviews, and there's not a lot of content from him. More in recent years as he's started to come out and teach a little bit. But there's a great interview that Sound on Sound did with him a few years back that I love because he really shared a lot about his mixing process. And what I wanted to do was pull out the three big nuggets that I got from the interview, some mixing secrets, if you will, that are super relevant to us in the home studio, super relevant to you if you mix any kind of music, especially hard rock, and I think you might find them a little surprising. Secret number one, the quick mix. That's right. All too often, when you and I sit down to start mixing, we want to dive in and get really surgical and start throwing around a lot of plugins and fixing things and going real deep on these tracks. But I have suggested for years and taught for years and advocated for years for the super quick mix. Mix as fast as you possibly can. And it seems like Andy agrees. In the interview, Andy says, I'll usually be throwing things up very quickly, almost like doing a quick monitor mix, and balance everything very quickly just to see how all the elements are supposed to sound together. And I have a basic feeling of the entire track. Now, Andy is really smart for mixing this way. You and I should too, for two reasons. One, when you start mixing quickly and you throw up faders and you just react, you create the most realistic balance as an audience would expect it. You're not overthinking things. And so you're just thinking about big picture, the forest, not the trees. Are these tracks balanced to each other? And you're making critical decisions on what I think are the most important things, which are level and then relative level to each other. Where you place the bass guitar and what level the vocal is and how hot or quiet the snare drum is will determine how much EQ or compression you need. Level is your number one weapon in a mix before you drop in any plugins. And so you are stopping to think again, like a listener, like, is this too loud or too quiet? Which is how listeners think anyway. So you're thinking big picture first before you dive into the nitty gritty. And the second reason you want to mix quickly is because the longer you take, the more you start to second guess yourself, the more you start to lose perspective. We lose perspective so quickly. Your ears adjust, so you can't trust your ears after a few seconds of listening. You get used to things a certain way. You forget what things should sound like. And here's the kicker, your first impression of a song is generally the right one. So an hour from now, you're going to be making bad decisions. The first thought that comes to your mind when you hear a track is generally the right thought. So you got to go with your gut and react to the music quickly before you lose that initial impression. Secret number two, Andy uses just one EQ and one compressor. Specifically, he mixes on an SSL console and he just uses the built-in EQ on each channel strip and the built-in compressor on each channel strip. Hardly any fancy outboard gear. And he says, I'm not shy of using EQ, and it's almost always board EQ. I've found over the years that I use less and less outboard for mixing. It seems that the SSL can give me what I need. Now, please don't miss this powerful concept and think that, oh, it's because he's got a real SSL. That's why his mixes sound awesome. No, the takeaway here is that simplicity works. By deciding to commit to just using one EQ and one compressor for 90% of your mix moves, you have eliminated the pointless energy wasted on picking which effect to use and freed up that brain space to then be used on being creative and strategic on what to do with the EQ and compressor you've chosen. And finally, secret number three from Andy's interview with Sound on Sound is ride the faders. Now, a lot of the work that Andy's mixed is really hard hitting stuff. I mean, he mixed Slayer. And naturally, people want to know how he gets such hard hitting records. Is it compression? Is it limiting? Is it some magical, obscure piece of outboard gear? Well, it turns out the answer is simply writing the volume faders. I'll spend a lot of time writing certain bass notes up that seem to be getting lost and notes down that are jumping out too much. This stage is mostly a matter of fine tuning the automation, writing this up a bit, swoop something else, maybe have a part 3 to 4 dB louder when the chorus hits, and then bring it down gradually. I'm playing around with things that I feel add to the drama and architecture of the mix. Now, the good news is that these days you don't need an SSL 9000 console to do automation. You have powerful volume and pan automation baked right into your DAW software. And most of the time, automation goes underused by the typical bedroom producer, myself included in the early years. So, what Wallace is doing here is really, really simple. He's taking, like we said, the most powerful mixing tool at your disposal, volume, and then animating it, as it were, across time, bringing it up here and there, creating some drama here and there. Instead of the right volume statically, always at the same level across the mix, he's taking that right volume for 80, 85% of the song and then making it even more perfect for the remaining 10 to 15% of the song. Just like a movie director or really the editor in the editing room can cut the film and zoom in on certain things in a certain way to force you, the audience, to pay attention to something that they want you to pay attention to in the movie. When you automate the volume faders, bring up or down the level of certain instruments or tracks, you are directing the listener's attention to where you want them to pay attention. That's your job, but it's also the power that you have that you can direct someone's focus on your mix by simply automating certain elements at certain points. When asked about his favorite gear, he simply divulged it's an SSL and Pro Tools. But that's all the attention he gave to gear. Instead, he talked about minimalism, feel, music, and understanding the artist's vision. It's funny how all home studio owners online seem to just want to talk about gear when a mixing legend like Andy Wallace just would rather talk about creating impact, in his own words, and has used the same setup for virtually 5 decades. There you have it, 3 secrets from mixing legend Andy Wallace. Let me know your thoughts. Share a comment below. Which one of these resonated with you? Do you do some of the same things Andy does? Anything surprise you? I would love to hear. Leave a comment below. And if maybe in this video I convinced you that great mixes have nothing to do with gear and have everything to do with what you do with the gear, and you want to know what to do next with your gear to get great mixes, I want to give you a step-by-step plan. In fact, I have an entire 6-step guide to making radio-ready songs. Now, mixing is only one of those steps. There's actually 5 other steps that are really, really critical. Andy Wallace, like anyone, would tell you that his mixes are so dependent on the steps that come prior and the ones after. If you want to know all 6 of these steps, have a proven plan, a path, if you will, to go from song idea to polished song on the radio or on Spotify or wherever, then you need this guide. It's absolutely free. It's a resource that you're meant to have and hold on to while you make music. Pick it up as my gift to you at radioreadyguide.com. Links below in the video and in the description box. Read it, implement it. Your songs will sound better, I promise. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you in another video real soon.